what it do. Is it recording?
Yes.
I don't see the recording. You sure about that?
It says it's recording on my end.
All right. Well, you know what? We're gonna roll with it. Bengals Army Thursday edition. How we doing, Chris?
Good, man. Good. Just got some football
Yeah.
up going, got a nice little kick back, relaxed night and watching some football and having a good time talking Bengals.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, we'll get right into it. Big Monday night win. White out. It's a white Bengal. What are your thoughts on that, Chris? Give me a breakdown.
I thought that like to just start, the uniforms were awesome. Um, that was really, really great. And the whiteout throughout the stadium was pretty evident, so that was cool to see. Um,
Mhm.
but as far as the game was concerned, I thought it was very sloppy. It was not everything that we want to see on offense, but the defense really came to play. Um, I thought the creativity on both the offensive and the defensive side were stepped way up. You saw that with Lou bringing DBs on blitzes and looping guys around and bringing linebackers and showing pressure and dropping out and having,
Mhm.
different sets and different formations, different calls, and some individual players stepped up as well. I thought Dax Hill had probably one of his best games
For
as a
sure.
Bengal. And as far as the offense is concerned, it was good to see McPherson hit, 4 field goals. But there were a lot of things still left to be desired. I thought Joe Mixon played well. The creativity was there on offense, and there were still just some throws that Joe missed. So I think that's obviously just got to do with his calf. There were some that he sailed way, way off target. But
Yep.
then there were other ones that he dropped on a dime. So I think the deep balls are going to come in time as he heals. But outside of that, that's basically my full breakdown. So what do you got?
Yeah, no, and I'll kind of reiterate a lot of the things you said, right? But I'll start with Lou, right? They call him the master of adjustment, right? After halftime, I mean, that first half was was something, you know. It was something that we didn't expect, and we saw those adjustments after halftime, and then he finally came out, brought that pressure, something we were looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's just something that we come to expect, and we just did not see it in the first two games. Moreover, Dax Hill, right? I'll claim credit for it, right? Dax Hill is one of those dudes that I've not been high on, especially coming out of his rookie year. I wasn't high on him even the first two games. I saw him flying around. I saw flashes, right? But I really wasn't high on this guy. Overall, I'm really impressed with the pressure that we got. One of those things we talked about in those podcasts before the season, right, was getting actual sacks on the quarterback, something that we had to do more effectively. That first half, I was a little bit frustrated coming out. In the second half, though, we really saw that defense open up, that creativity start, and then really start to feast on that Rams offensive line that I think is elevated a little bit just because of the name and Sean McVay behind it. I think they got exposed a little bit. Um, but of course, Joe sailing those throws, I think it was something that we're going to come to expect for a little while as he heals. And I think we're going to have to strap in for some gritty wins, right? This was a win they had to have. It was something that, going into that game, there was no option. They had to win that game. They got the win, right? We'll walk away from it. In the NFL, you don't get style points like you do in college, right? They don't care about style points. It's W's and it's L's, and that's it. Um, so you got to really separate your mind from wanting those style points, and then I just hope that Joe gets healthy because it's evident this offense is very limited, running out of the gun. But call out to Zach Taylor. He really tried to push the envelope. I think they threw almost 50 passes in that game. And it was extremely pass heavy, even with a limited quarterback. So good dub.
Very good dub. Nothing, not really much more to say about it themselves or than that, but handful of good takeaways that I noticed during the game. One, Drew Sample using him in the backfield as a passing down protector. It's pretty clear at this point, 3 games in, that they don't have the production out of their third down running backs that they thought that they
They
did
don't.
coming
They
into the
don't. They don't.
season.
And I mean, it's obvious to you. It's obvious to me. They don't. They're searching for it. I see Williams in there sometimes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take your thunder, but
No, you're good. You're good. I'm completely okay with them bringing Drew Sample back to the
Mhm.
backfield, and I don't care if the other team knows that we're passing it. Like at a certain point, you just have to be protected, and then your guys are going to win. Like so, I think that they're leaning into that reality, which I thought was great. Um, and it was an adjustment that I thought was necessary, and actually it's cool for me to see because Drew Sample kind of gets like crapped on all the time for like being a second round pick, and everybody's been basically trashing him since he was drafted. But like one thing he's really good at is blocking. So like
Mhm.
he's still here, so we got to use him, in his strengths, and one of his strengths is blocking. So for him to be back there, and I think that they can do multiple things out of that too. And
Mhm.
they can use that versatility to their strength. Like if they put Jamar Chase and Drew Sample in the backfield as like a split back package, like once or
Yep.
twice a game, like there's real potential there for like to throw some defenses off.
And I agree with you on that. I think they're gonna have to get more creative. They've got the skill for it. I think we saw a couple things, right? And you talk about Drew Sample. I'll talk about Mitchell Wilcox and Drew Sample, right? They tried to use a little bit both of them to their strengths. I think they're trying to get Irv Smith to be the all-around tight end. It's hasn't clicked so far. That's fine. But when it comes to Mitchell Wilcox and Drew Sample, none of us have really been high on these guys, but they each have their own strengths. Blocking being one of them for Sample. Wilcox, I think we saw him really open up a little bit and catch those passes. And one thing, and I'll probably toot my horn for a little bit here, but one thing that's certain about Joe Burrow is he likes the tight end outlet, right? That's something that I don't think they've put enough emphasis on to get him a tight end outlet that's reliable year after year. Uzama was that guy, right? Hayden Hurst caught passes and he was that pseudo guy, but he wasn't a blocker. I think they're going to be able to get that out of a combination of Wilcox and Sample. It's just how they use them, right? In that game, I thought they used him pretty well. He got some crucial third downs, got some crucial downs or some crucial yards, I should say, out of those guys. And I really liked what they were doing.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that those two guys use them to their strengths, and then we're good to go. Last thought on this game, I thought that we already touched on it. The pressure, they finally got sacks. I thought it was going to be 4 or 5 sacks would win us the game. They ended up with 6. That puts us 3 sacks week 1, 0 sacks week 2. If we get 2 sacks, maybe 3 sacks, we probably win that game. 6 sacks this week. Let's look to keep that pressure going in. Which I think that leading into the game against Tennessee, I think that that's something that we will still be able to do is continue to put pressure on the opposing quarterback. One of these weeks, we're gonna get Joseph Osai back, so that'll be a big boost. I didn't see if he played any snaps this week, but I didn't notice him out there when I was watching the game. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes from here on out. But I think they're going to keep guys fresh. They're going to keep getting after the quarterback, and Tannehill's a guy that you can force into some mistakes. So
Yeah, for sure, and I agree with that. And I guess one last thing on this game, you talk about Joseph Asai and the need for pressure and how we got it. Um, I think Bengals fans as a whole have been a little bit critical of Miles Murphy, me included. I saw that guy get after it. I saw him contribute to pressure. He wasn't the one that was sacking the quarterback, but he was one that was delivering pressure on the downs that he got the chance to, and it led to sacks like guys from Sam Hubbard and Dax Hill. And I think that's that progression we want to see. I think Cincinnati fans don't want a project or a work in progress kind of guy that's touted with the amount of talent that this guy coming out of Clemson had, right, as a first round draft pick. But I saw that and I really liked it. And, looking forward to more of that, right? Because we're going to need it. I think Osai is a great dude. He's going to provide a lot to this team. He's proven in the playoffs, he's proven in regular season, but he's still injury prone, right? So they're going to need somebody else to step up. when Trey or Sam need a break or, in those pass pro sets where, maybe a Sam Hubbard isn't the guy that they're gonna need to use there. Maybe he's gonna have to cover a tight end, right? They're gonna need another guy. So I'm happy to see that, and just to reiterate, good dub.
Yeah.
So anything else? Sorry.
No, that's all I got on the Rams game, really. Like, not much more to say about it. Just quick and easy, ugly win, but it's a win. And I think
It's a
that,
win in the white tiger.
yep. And I think that might end up being a theme, like you said, for the next few weeks. Ugly win, but a win. And I'm really hoping, like, Arizona came out and shocked the league, by beating the Cowboys. So like, that they can beat good teams. Granted, that's a couple weeks away, but like Tennessee, they have their strengths. One of their strengths is Derrick Henry, and they have a good change of pace guy in Tajay Spears. And I was listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Shout out, but
Shout out.
they were talking to the Locked On Titans host, and he was saying basically like the Titans need to pass the ball more when Derrick Henry's in and run the ball more when Tajay Spears is in, because otherwise they're just playing into the kind of the stereotypes, which like that's something that I said about the Bengals the first couple weeks. Hey, teams know we're running it, so they're going to play the run. Teams know we're passing it, so we're going to play the pass. And I think
Sure.
he echoed that same sentiment about the Titans. But one thing that we know about the Titans is that what they want to do is they want to run the ball and beat you down with Derrick Henry and use the pass as a secondary option. I don't know
Sure.
that right now they have the
Receiving
weapons.
threat.
Well, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, like obviously DeAndre Hopkins, like one of the greats in the last 5 or 6 years. So he's still got something that he's going to be able to contribute. Traylon Burks, as an athlete and as a up and coming wide receiver, I think he's got some real strengths. So I think that he can make a play here and there. And then they have a couple guys at tight end. I think one of the guys, Chig Okonkwo,
They call
however
him
you say it.
Chig, yeah, and I'll
Yeah,
answer that. So I had a friend that played for Tennessee. Won't plug him, but yeah, they call him Chig. But he's a good pass catching tight end.
yeah. So I think that they have like some decent guys in their line. It's not horrible. So there's a threat there, one of those any given Sunday kind of threats. So I think that, but as long as the Bengals defense takes care of business, as long as the guys step up and they make the plays that they need to make, I think there's nothing that like scares me about the Tennessee offense. And if we can keep Tennessee below 17 points, I think that this will be another low scoring game. But I have confidence that the offense scores 2 touchdowns in this one. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
there's really nothing that has led me to that, because we've gone 6 or 7 quarters, maybe 8 quarters so far out of 12, where we haven't scored a touchdown, and that's a pretty big issue. But
It's a huge issue.
I think that the running game sort of got on track. I think that the chemistry between Orlando Brown and Volson is going to get there, and I think for whatever reason, I think Volson and Ted Karras have had a little bit of like struggles getting to some double teams and stuff, and whether that's whether
It's a
that's
switch block issue. I mean, they clearly were confused on their switching and who need to cover what. And not to break you, but Aaron Donald was moving around the line a lot. That's one thing the Rams do with him, and I think they were getting confused with how to switch and who to switch to. And Volson's still a good player. He didn't
yeah.
grade out well, but I think he'll be fine. But it wasn't a good look. Him and Karras certainly are having their struggles with the
Yeah.
communication thing.
From my perspective, it wasn't as much of like a switch off and on or a communication thing, but it was more of like a Volson is clearly the 5th best guy on the line. Like, that's not saying anything
Oh
negative
yeah,
against him, but like we've got, some good players, and, whether you want to put Karras and Jonah as like average players, whatever, like he's pretty much the fifth best second round or second year, fourth round guy. Like there's no huge expectations for this guy, but I think one of the things was he was getting beat quickly. So like some of the double teams that were supposed to happen weren't really able to happen because Volson didn't get them into position. But
That's right.
whatever they have to do to like work through that could just be, I mean, Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns defensive line, the Baltimore defense, which like their line might not have the guys, as much as
Their
they usually do.
linebackers do, and they still have Jadeveon Clowney. So
Yeah. And I mean, Baltimore's defense is just like the coaching is always there. So like
it's stingy.
so they're whether it's a player driven thing or a scheme driven thing, I think that a couple more weeks of playing together and getting it figured out, I think that's just what happens in these early seasons. But what other kind of keys to this game do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious, right? Keep the defensive momentum going. I think they're going to need that versus a guy like Tannehill who can throw the ball. They do have weapons on that offense. If they can keep the consistent pressure on that offense and stop the run where they need to, I think they're going to be really successful. I think one more thing for me is the obvious, the Joe Burrow continual injury, making sure that we don't have any setbacks. I don't care if it's a 1-point win. I don't care if it's a 2-point win. Get a gritty win in Tennessee. That's fine with me. But get in, get out, and continue the rehab process because if there's one thing that we know for sure is that the Bengals are trying to prepare a backup for him, but they really don't want to use the backup. I think that's pretty obvious by now. They would rather use a Joe Burrow at 75% than a Jake Browning at 100%. If this guy can continue to progress through his healing, the offense get a little more consistency, and then lastly, big call out, get a first half touchdown. I mean, start fast because if there's one thing that we learned last year through the season is when Cincinnati scores first, they're statistically much more likely to win the ball game, right, than they are to lose, regardless of how the second and third quarter go, unless the blowout. But all we saw last year is when Cincinnati started fast and they scored first, we knew they were winning that game, right? Even the Bills game, that canceled game, unfortunately, we knew they were going to win that game, right? The Bills playoff game, right? All of these games that we can point to and say they started fast, we knew they were going to win. There was no doubt in our minds if they can start fast on offense, keep Joe Burrow continually healthy and moving towards his rehab, and then the defense keeping the momentum, I think they win.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think I can't remember where I heard this. So one of those Twitter doctors was talking, and they were talking about Joe Burrow's calf injury and whatever. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that they said there's probably about a 20% chance of re-injury, which 1 in 5, that's not like, it's not great, but it's not horrible. Like it's enough that you're worried about it. But what they also said was if you want to hold him out until he's 100% and there's almost no risk of re-injury, then you're holding him out for like 6 weeks. So I think, and granted, I don't remember which one of these Twitter doctors I saw this from or where I heard it. So like, I can't give you my source, whatever, and that might hurt the credibility of this statement. But I think that if, like, for all the people that are saying, hey, you got to sit Joe Burrow because just in case he gets re-injured, just in case, you can't sit Joe Burrow for 6 weeks and still expect to make the playoffs after starting 0-2, especially in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that at this point, you got to kind of do what you can to mitigate the risk, and whether that's, keep him in the pocket as much as you can, use your quick game. I would like to see them get a couple more screens worked into the offense.
Agreed.
I know they tried a couple
Yep.
this week that were unsuccessful, and Joe ended up throwing it, at the running back's feet or whatever the case is. But I think if we can get that game moving, we have plenty of playmakers in the screen game. Um, Last point that I want to touch on for this game before we get to the score predictions is I saw that Charlie Jones was on the injury report for a thumb
Mm,
injury. So I think that Josevach might be able to step in on the offensive side, but we're going to lose a little bit on special teams if Charlie Jones doesn't end up playing this game. And I think that his punt returning has come a long way since from week 1 to week 3.
agreed.
He's been really solid in the return game, and I think that's a big advantage when you're getting 5-10 yards more of field position each time you get a punt. That's a big thing in the NFL. So
Every
just
time
wanted,
they gave him space. Yeah.
just wanted to mention that before we move on. So do you have any last thoughts about the game before we get to predictions?
No, that's a good call out, the thumb. I mean, in particular, I'd call that out specifically because when you're catching balls at the height that a punt comes in, right, a thumb is
Yep.
pretty important. You don't want to fumble that ball. But
Yeah.
no, we'll get right into score predictions. I know we want to cut this one a little bit shorter tonight, but go ahead, shoot me with your score prediction.
All right, so I'm gonna go. Last week I picked 23-16,
Yep.
and I did call the 4 field goals from McPherson, whatever. But this week I think it's gonna be another like ugly, weird score. But I do think the Bengals have this one kind of in the bag, and I think that the Bengals defense in particular is starting to get into a rhythm. So I'm gonna call Tennessee with 4 field goals and 0 touchdowns this week, and
Oh,
I'm gonna say the Bengals do score 3 touchdowns, and I'm gonna say that the Bengals win 21-12.
well, that's awful close to my score prediction. I'm going to have a boring score prediction, but I was going to go 24-13 Cincinnati. I'm going to go 2 touchdowns. We'll go 3 touchdowns and a field goal. I think we're going to finally get T involved again in this. So, no, we're all aware of the slump that he had, the few drops that he had in that last game. I think he's going to get back to normal T, just like we saw last year versus Tennessee in the year prior. I think we're going to get normal T in this game, over the top. They're going to try to open it up a little bit. 3 tutties. I think Joe Mixon gets involved again. I think they clearly have seen the efficiency he's had on the ground. And then the screen game, to your point, right? If they can get a couple of screens going, I think it's going to really open up the offense for a Jamar Chase or maybe a Tyler Boyd touchdown. So I got Cincinnati 24-13 in this game.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out on T, and it deserves. I'm going to take 15 seconds here, but he had probably 3 like pretty decent drops in the
Yep.
game last week, which very uncharacteristic of any NFL player to have 3 or 4 drops in a game, let alone a guy at T's level. But like you said, he's a Tennessee killer. He's from Tennessee. Every single time he plays there, he comes back and he has a good game. So I think that this is probably about an 8 catch, 110, 115 yard, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns game for T.
Yep.
My guess for him would be like 8 for 115 and a touchdown. I am like, for fantasy purposes, I am going hard after him to try and trade before the game. And to
I have him, and I want a big game out of him, man. He was
yeah,
my 3rd round pick this year, and I'm like, I need a game out of T, right? We've
yeah.
only had one. So
Yeah, well, I think this might be your week. This might be the week you've been waiting for. Unfortunately, I do. My prediction is that my cost for him goes up significantly after this week. But on that note,
mhm.
let's get back to watching the Lions versus Packers game. Another guy I'm hoping for in fantasy, Jamar Gibbs. I want to see him have one more slow week so I can get him at a reasonable cost because I'm going to be trading for him so hard this week.
He's going to be so good if they just give the ball to him more. He's one of those guys that demands the football.
He's
But I agree with you, man.
Yeah, every time he touches it, he's electric. But all right, man, this was a good one. So
Good
you
stuff.
know, can't wait till Sunday. Every Thursday, it just feels like it's so far away. But I'm glad this
It
one's a 1
does.
o'clock game. I'm glad this one's a 1 o'clock game, and we'll get around to watching some early football again. All right.
About
Well,
time. About time.
good.
Hey, real quickly, if you're not following us, follow us on Twitter, or I should say, follow us on X now. Bengals Army
X.
1. And if you guys have any questions, good, bad, or indifferent feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. If you want to talk about my backdrop, I know I'm in a different room in the house. I know people love to eat that up. So talk about that. We'd love to hear it. And on that note, peace.
Who dey?